I'm Eva Jean Thompson. My parents were Elmer and Aletta Thompson. She was a Geraldson, and they met roller skating.
So you have two older sisters, or had?
Elmira and Brigitta, and then Conrad. And then Everett died when he was 16. And it was a very, very sad thing because he was a popular boy and good looking. And Mr. Bray, the principal, was at the funeral, which was unusual for, he closed the school down. But he played in the band, and
was he older than you?
Yeah, he was the oldest.
He was the oldest.
Eldest, he, and then Brigitta, and then Conrad, and Elmira, and myself. And then there were two babies that died before, not two babies, three babies. Well, Everett was one of them at 16, but one baby was stillborn. The first one, my mother, she had an accident in the woods with a cutter. Remember the old cutter? And then the other one was drowned on the farm. My mother had.
His name was Conrad too, wasn't it?
Yeah. He was supposed to be taken care of by a hired girl who happened to be a niece or something of the family, and she didn't know that he had gotten out of the house. And the hired man was fixing something in the well, and went to the barn to get a thing to fix it with. Came back, and the baby was floating in the water, and already dead. Yeah. So my mother had three very, very serious. Then she played the piano, and she also had a cousin in Chicago who, you're sweating. So they came out to see my folks, or her folks on the farm at Geraldson Farm, and they heard my mother play piano, and they offered her a year of piano lessons in Chicago, and to be their maid, so to speak. And so she went there, and she got to go to all the things at the Chicago Theater and all the, all these.
This is before they were married. This is before your parents were married.
No, they were married.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, she hadn't, I don't suppose she met Elmer at that time. But I think it was a year that she was in Chicago and really learned a lot of the things that you learn in a big city. And she always had a refinement to her that a lot of other farm women didn't have. Mm-hmm. But she was the president of the Ladies' Aid, she was a choir director, a good pianist, and she taught all the kids in the neighborhood except her own, because her own were not.
So you didn't learn to play the piano?
No. Oh, I can peck away at it. And Brigitta and Cleon are better at Brigitta, and Connie didn't either. They learned at St. Olaf. So she was such a busy woman. She'd probably say she was with the living room had the piano in it, and she would be cooking, and we'd be trying to practice, and she said, "No, that's not right. Do it again, and try it again."
George's family was in the original Helly Thompson.
Right.
Thomas Helly.
And they were on the hill.
Your farm then, your Elmer and Aletta's farm, and your farm was a new house.
We had a new house, yeah.
Okay, on adjoining farms.
Yeah, so my mother moved into a brand new house when she. And another thing about Mom is that her father owned a farm that had strawberries on it, lots of strawberries, and they had to have pickers. And so my mother was the main picker. She was the best picker. So when she was married, it was strawberry time, June 14th. And she had a conscience that bothered her a lot. She couldn't leave her parents with all that work, strawberry work. So she stayed overnight that first night, I think that first week, all the strawberries, before she got to live with her husband and on the farm. So we always thought that was.
That's dedication.
Yeah, dedication. And they always had a big harvest, so of course that was what she did. So I can't even describe them, they were so wonderful. My father was a 4-H leader of the boys. My mother was a 4-H leader for the girls. And so we learned to sew early and learned to take care of ourselves. And my brother, Conrad, was a chief caretaker of horses and cows and calves, and he usually won the first prize. And then a lot of accidents on the way too. You know how animals are. So we had so much fun. Everett was a very handy guy. He built us stilts and a little car that he got stuff from the railroad, because they'd fix things at the railroad and they'd leave their stuff there. He'd go and pick it all up and make something. He made a car, and we had a dog that pulled the car. And the neighbors all came over and just had a lot of fun with us. And we had a great neighborhood, and all mixed up. It was Catholic, it was Lutheran, it was German Lutheran. It was, just very, very nice neighborhood. And everybody helped each other, which is unusual for nowadays.
School.
I went to Manitowoc Rural County School. I only went 2 years.
2 years. You got a teaching certificate.
Yeah, and I taught, but I didn't like it. I was in the country, and
You went to high school in Valders?
Valders, yeah. And I played basketball when I went to Normal, and when we were playing the playoff game, I was the center because I was tall, and the other gal that was the captain of her group, she was so angry that they were losing, and as we had the tip-off, she put her knee up and caught me in the throat.
Ooh.
And that's why I've talked so low. I was used to be a soprano, but I got to be an alto because, or even a bass. I mean a tenor. So that was a hard one because it was.
And that was the old 6-on-6 basketball.
Yeah, right. And so that was a very bad thing. My mother felt terrible because she was a musician and all that. He was weeping, and we never saw him.
You went up to start over. You went up the step.
And we went around. Just happened to go through the hall, and he was sitting on the front steps of the house, and he was crying, and he was crying. He was talking to the Lord, and he said, "Why did you have to take my son when all these, I can't hardly say it, when all these drunks around here are no good and they don't do anything for anybody, and here you have to take my beloved son." That was it. And
were you by yourself, or
what?
When you heard this, were you by yourself, or were you
I
with
was
your
by
mom,
myself.
or
You didn't.
I don't know.
No, I was alone. I just happened to go upstairs and heard this talking out there, and I stood by the screen door, and that was it. He was talking to God. And we had our Bible time at night, and he usually read the stories, and he was just a great dad.
Do you think that changed your dad?
I think so. I think he became more attentive, perhaps, to people around and us.
Dad would say
My
this.
dad was saying that, Conrad was a preacher, so he was keeping people, their souls clean. And Brigitta was a social worker, and she was working with people who needed to be socialized. And Elmira was working for Lever Brothers and kept them all clean. I don't think he included me. I guess I was a brat, I don't know. Saviors, yes.
You were at Our Saviors,
Yeah.
like Harvey's family.
Yeah. And we also sang in that big choir that Martin Trigstead had. He had 60 people in the choir, and I was in that choir, and it was a thrill because he was so good as a director and as a pastor.
I've heard Harvey's sisters, Dorothy and Joyce, talk about him.
Everybody on that picture I knew.
Were you there for the reunion when he came back one time?
I must have been gone to Ohio by that time.
Dorothy told about, he'd been gone a number of years,
Yeah.
and there was some celebration that he came back for. And he directed, they invited everybody that had ever sung with him.
Oh, I remember hearing about it, but we were gone.
And he came in with a cane or something, hobbling,
Oh, really?
and they were all sympathizing, and he threw his cane away and took off.
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah. And he actually was a personal friend of ours because his, well, Swanee, my sister-in-law Swanee, was a cousin of his, and so that was a connection.
Wow.
So he'd come out to our place, he and his Agnes would come out to our place and have dinner and so forth. And he was one of the fellows that said, it was Thanksgiving Day, and he got up there and he says, if anybody is not here in church today, he better get a stomachache because from all the turkey, because he should be here in church.
What was the most important or valued thing or things that you learned from your mother?
Oh my, good cook. She's a good cook. She was a very biblical person. She wanted us to know, we always had to know our lessons before we went to Sunday school. She taught us good manners, and so did my dad. And I really feel that we were very fortunate to have such wonderful parents. And they had good backgrounds, and my dad was the first one to get rubber tires on his tractor, and he was the first one to get a threshing and a corn thing that you put the corn.
Combine.
Yeah, combine. I've been away from the farm too long, but none of us
And
became.
a corn picker.
Oh yeah, all those things, and raised good crops, except that we had the river near us, and we've had floods everywhere. And of course, he battled it all. He did it all, and all the neighbors sort of came to Dad for.
Now, was your farm part of the original Thomas Helly farm?
Yes,
Your farm and George's farm?
George. Yeah, great mother,
Mhm.
and I still think of her almost daily because she was so interested in us, and she didn't really want us to stay around the farm. She wanted us to get out and do things that were good for other people, and yeah, I think it kind of worked because Brigetta became a social worker and Connie became a pastor, and I was a teacher shortly, and Omar was a business gal. So I think they did a good job. You know.